Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM, joined by Nick Bonaddio and Rachel Dory. I'm Olivia Harlan Dekker. Let's start with the only two remaining undefeated teams in the NFL, both from the NFC. It's the 49ers and the Eagles. Will one of them be the number one seed in the NFC? The odds suggest they will be, and I think most people feel they will be. The 49ers odds shifted from plus 150 last week to even money this week, a 33.3% move after their 32-point victory over America's team, the Cowboys. The Eagles odds to be the number one seed also moved up 12.5% to plus 175 from plus 200 last week. That's over that 9-point win at the Rams. So this question might be answered in week 13 when Philadelphia hosts the 49ers. Nick, are you backing the 49ers or the Eagles in this spot?
I'm backing the Eagles in this spot. I think the 49ers are the better team, but not by as much as the discrepancy in the two lines would imply. And I think ultimately this is more about the weakness of the NFC East than anything else. The Giants and the Commanders are two of the worst teams in the league, certainly worse than the Rams, their Seahawks, or the Cardinals. And the Eagles got 3 games coming up against them. I think taking the Eagles here with the plus value relative towards the 49ers also allows you to hedge off of this position when they play with the 49ers money line bet in week 13. So I think this is a position where what you think might happen, the 49ers and the better team, isn't necessarily the best value bet, which I think is pretty clearly the Eagles.
Yep, both still at plus money. Rachel, what do you think? Either of these teams stick out?
I like the 49ers, and like Nick just mentioned, they're the best team. They just ran over the Dallas Cowboys, who many had as one of the best defensive teams in the league and one of the Super Bowl contenders. When you have a statement game like that, naturally there's going to be some line movement. I do agree that the NFC East is a lot weaker with the Commanders and the Giants. They're absolutely terrible. I just think this will come down to week 13. And when you look at it, San Francisco has strong everywhere, right? They've got a really good tight end. They've got an excellent defense. They've got a really good quarterback. They've got everything kind of happening for them. And so I think if you can get them at plus money, that's something where there is still some level of value there.
Right. They still seem head and shoulders above everyone right now. Nick, the Lions have the third best odds right now at plus 1,000. How do you feel about their chances at the number one seed, considering that they are in a weaker division?
Yeah, I mean, look, no one would argue that the NFC North is a murderer's row of teams. I think even at like a 11-1 odds, which is what plus 1,000 indicates, it still seems a little bit too rich for me. There's still a lot of questions about how Jared Goff plays away from the turf at Ford Field. The team is complete, but it's not as complete as the 49ers. It's not as complete as the Eagles. It's a weaker offense and defense than both of those teams. I think certainly it's a great story, but it's not one that I would back with my money.
Okay, let's stick with futures, but move from the best teams to the worst teams. Wah, wah. Both Vikings star wide receiver Justin Jefferson and Cardinals running back James Conner have been placed on injured reserve. Both teams have one measly win this season, and it won't get any easier without their stars. A lot of question marks now about Justin Jefferson returning. The Cardinals opened the season as the favorite to win the fewest games at plus 325, but they're the one team you see whose odds have decreased. The Panthers are the only winless team in the NFL and are now the favorite at plus 275. That's an 89% move from their opening odds of plus 2,500. The Bears, Giants, Broncos, Patriots, and Vikings are the other teams with just one win this season. Rachel, which team would you bet on to win the fewest games this season? Such a depressing category.
It is really a depressing category, right? I'm going to back the Denver Broncos here. I think when you look at it, they still have to play Kansas City one more time. Got to play Detroit, Buffalo. They play the Chargers twice. They got Cleveland. And even still, you've got Houston, Green Bay, Oakland. And while those teams aren't excellent, I think Green Bay, Jordan Love's going to continue to find his stride. Houston, CJ Stroud has really found his stride. And Oakland, you never really know with Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are all better teams than the Broncos. And so you look at it, they just have the least chance to win a number of games. And so, I mean, there's no value on the Carolina line, even though they are just as bad. But I think anytime you can get 7-1 odds on a team like the Broncos, who gave up 70 points and only scored 20 a couple of weeks ago, this is something you have to pay attention to. They just got run over by the Bears as well. I think you look at it, the Broncos have some value here at plus 800.
It feels weird to say I like someone in this spot because it really I'm hating against them. So in this spot, I hate the Patriots at plus 950. This is really, again, about strength of schedule. the Patriots have looked terrible, and everyone remembers my Mac Jones slander last week, and maybe I cursed him, but the Patriots here, they're looking at the Bills, they're looking at the Dolphins, they're looking at a competitive Jets team that might get Kirk Cousins, and you have to be thinking, where are the wins going to come from here for the Patriots? All the other teams that are listed have at least something going on. They've got a better schedule, they've got legitimate talent at the skill positions. I really don't see it with the Patriots, and I think this is a good spot to fade whatever remnants of the public perception exists around the Patriots at a pretty nice line.
Rachel, what do you think about the Vikings? Because there are so many rumors right now about if Justin Jefferson comes back from this injury in a contract year, or if he sits because they're so bad, do they trade Kirk Cousins? There's so much talk about the Vikings. So can you make an educated bet in this situation?
I think you can, and I think the contract situation presents a unique sort of tidbit here, right? You look at it, Justin Jefferson's hurt. He's likely not going to play for at least 4 weeks. Then you've got the added Kirk Cousins rumors with the New York Jets. They definitely need a quarterback, even though I kind of have liked how Zach Wilson has played. If Minnesota were to trade Kirk Cousins, I think you're looking at a team that is without effectively its 2 best players in Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. And at that point, if I'm Justin Jefferson, I'm calling it a year at that point. You don't need to risk injury. And I think at that point, you're kind of going after Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams and Justin Jefferson next season could be absolutely terrifying to play against. Yep. And so there is some value there at plus 2,500 if you think that Justin Jefferson is going to sit and Kirk Cousins is going to be traded. You might want to jump on that line.
Okay, I like it. So last week was really good to the public. In fact, the public is 42-27-3 against the spread. That's the best through the first 5 weeks since 2009. So let's focus in on week 6 and who the public is betting on, because they've been doing really well. An AFC South rematch from week 1. We have Colts and Jags, but you might be surprised to see that 74% of early bets are on the Colts to cover. Gardner Minshew will start at quarterback. We know that, and they placed Anthony Richardson on IR with a shoulder injury. Nick, the Jaguars won by 10 in Indy to start the regular season. So are you fading the public on this one here? Because a couple running backs will be playing.
Yeah, it's sort of a yes and no for me here. I'm with the public here that the Colts are being underrated. They're a different team than they were in week 1. But I think from a purely ROI perspective, if you do like the Colts in this spot, it actually makes more sense to take the money line with them and the added value on top of that. This game models out to be closer to a toss-up, somewhere between 1 to 1.5. And so while the public is probably focused on Jonathan Taylor getting more integrated in the Colts offense, as you said, I'm actually really more interested in Gardner Minshew stepping in to replace Anthony Richardson, because he throws the ball a lot better than Tony Rich did. He's extremely underrated and will be able to create a pretty diverse attack to hit the Jaguars where they're most vulnerable. And so I think if you are the public and you do want to tail the public here and you like the Colts, I actually like it more in the money line just with the added juice than I like it at 4.
Tony Rich, you guys must be tight. Rachel, are you siding with the public on this one?
I am actually going to take the Jaguars on this one. So I'm going to fade the public. I think when you look at it, the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming off 2 statement wins, specifically the one against the Buffalo Bills in London. And I think when you look at what their trip overseas did for them last year, they came back and they sort of rode that wave all the way into the playoffs. I think here you come off a win against the Buffalo Bills, one of the best teams in the league, and you can kind of ride that wave. Now, I have concerns about Jacksonville at home. They haven't necessarily been good, but Trevor Lawrence seems to have found his gear. Calvin Ridley has been excellent right from the hop. I think Travis Etienne is going to get some more touches in this as well, even as a receiving running back. So when I look at this, I think that Jacksonville has a chance to sort of ride this wave. And I do have some concerns. Without Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew is the better throwing quarterback, but there isn't that diverse attack because he's unable to rush the ball the way that Tony Rich is, as Nick calls him. And so I think they're going to have issues stopping a sort of offense that boasts Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, and it's going to pose some trouble. And so I like this number -4. My model has it at closer to -5.1. So I think there is at least a little bit of value here on this line.
But an unprecedented schedule disadvantage with 2 weeks in London. So it'll be interesting to see if that is going to correlate with anything we've seen in the past. Let's continue the AFC discussion with a trend. It's cross-conference matchups. Over the last 3 weeks, the AFC is 10-4 against the spread versus the NFC, and there are 6 games involving a team from each conference this week. All of the AFC teams happen to be at home as well. That's interesting. So, Nick, which one of these AFC teams is going to continue the trend and cover the spread?
Yeah, this was a no bet to me. I think there are some interesting storylines here. I think, if everyone was healthy, I think I would be a little bit interested in maybe the 49ers and Browns. I think 7 is a big number, and the Browns are a little bit underrated, at least with how their defense can keep them in games. But I think without more information around, what exactly is going on with the health of Deshaun Watson and more information around even the weather, I've heard it's going to be pretty bad up there. To me, all of these are kind of in a position where it's no bet. I don't have any particular strong feelings. And I always say, if you're betting, you should always be betting with a better hunch than just guessing.
Rachel, what do you think? Any of those games stick out to you?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Nick, honestly. The Panthers-Dolphins game is interesting to me, but it's still a no bet for me. I don't love that number. And so I look at this and I go, okay, like maybe we're looking at the Saints and the Texans and the Panthers and the Dolphins. I like the 49ers, but I think the Browns are underrated. And with the injuries that Nick mentioned, it's kind of a no bet for me. So right now, I don't think I'm confident enough backing any of these teams to say, okay, I'm going to be able to put my money where my mouth is and kind of put my money down. And so I think if I'm going to bet on anything, it's probably the Dolphins-Panthers game. But even that, it's kind of like a hold your nose situation. So I'd actually recommend against any of this.
I'm surprised neither one of you mentioned Sunday Night Football, Giants-Bills.
I mean, 14 is a big number.
Yeah.
I could see some backdoor covers coming into play there. I could see, the Bills maybe underestimating their opponent a little bit. It's just hard to get there with where the Giants currently are. I love hold your nose bets. I'm always advocating for the Jets or the Giants or, Western Michigan or whatever. I do usually love those bets. I just don't love that position here.
Until the Giants defense shows that they are willing to even participate and show up in a game, it's really hard to back them, especially against the Bills, who are going to be angry after what happened against Jacksonville and London. Right. This could be absolutely terrifying.
Okay, I like it. This time, let's focus on a few players and their receiving yards. It's fun to get over to props. We've found 3 players who have been beating the books. Each one has gone over their receiving yards prop in at least 4 games this season. Michael Thomas has recorded 50-plus receiving yards in all 5 games this season. Great to see him back. Rachel, will any of these players continue their trend and go over their number this weekend?
I've got Bijan Robinson. I think if you look at this, Nick mentioned earlier, the Washington Commanders are absolutely awful. And Desmond Ridder isn't exactly fantastic either. And the one thing Washington has is a decent pass rush. And I think that for the Falcons to be successful, they're going to have to get the ball out of Desmond Ridder's hands very quickly. And the way to do that is to get the ball to Bijan Robinson. So these quick little checkdowns, quick little slot passes, over 24.5 for such a talented running back who caught the ball on his hip last weekend. I think you look at this and you go, if they can just get it over that pass rush and into Bijan Robinson's hands, I think he's got a chance to absolutely smash this number and run wild here, take advantage of his speed, his ability to cut back. I really like this bet.
Nick, where do you stand on this trend?
I like Zay Flowers here. But this is a tough one because from a projection perspective, it's pretty close. We have this modeled out around 58, but you really can't argue with the role that Zay Flowers has as the clear number 1 wideout with the Ravens. And really, his play is an extension of the run game with his low A-dot, high yak route tree. I think this Titans are very stout against the run, but are the 3rd worst pass defense by efficiency. So I think the Ravens are going to lean against a traditional run attack, lean into this short, low A-dot pass route with Zay Flowers. And I see this closer to 7-8 targets. And with his very high completion percentage, I think this is a pretty great pick to go over.
It's time for primetime props. We're going to share our favorite prop in one of the primetime games, Sunday night, which is a bit of a dog, and Monday night. Nick, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I like James Cook under 57.5 rushing yards here. We have it projected around 52. I usually don't like prop unders because it kind of makes me feel like a hater, but I think this line's pretty inflated for James Cook here. His snap share is pretty consistently heading downward with increased touches for Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, particularly in the red zone in under 2 minutes. And I think there's a real game script issue with this game potentially getting out of hand and all the main important role players getting shut down in the fourth. There's also some narratives at play here. I could see the Bills wanting to flex a little bit, given what happened last week. I can see some squeaky wheel narratives with Stephon Diggs and the broken iPad. I think all of these flow together and make this spot a pretty clear fade for James Cook in this spot.
Squeaky wheel narrative. That's a good phrase to add to the show. Rachel, which primetime prop is catching your eye?
Yeah, I'm going with a parlay here. I've loved kind of looking at passing touchdowns, and there are two guys who I really like this weekend: Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, both to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think when you look at it, Josh Allen, squeaky wheel narrative, I'm going to steal that from Nick. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, even passing to running backs. I think like he's had so many opportunities for passing touchdowns in the games he's played. I think with the Giants defense, that's not going to be an issue at all. And you look at Justin Herbert on the Monday nighter. If the Chargers are going to stay in the game, I think he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think he's going to look to Keenan Allen. There's so many opportunities for Justin Herbert here. I really like his number over 1.5 passing touchdowns as well. If you parlay that, you get positive money there. We like that.
I like that parlay a lot. We like money a lot. Before we wrap up this episode, we're giving you our blue chip bets, aka our best bets. Anything we love, spread, money line, total, prop, whatever we want. Free reign. Nick, what is your blue chip bet?
Yeah, this was probably a little more conventional than most of my other bets. I usually like to go a little esoteric in this section, but I'm going to go Louisville first half -4.5 versus Pitt. I think if you look at the sober facts here, this is the number 4 team in the country going against a 1-4 Pitt team that got blown out by Virginia Tech, who got blown out by Rutgers. I think to make matters worse, they're starting a brand new quarterback, which really makes you wonder if Phil Dracovic was as bad as he's played this season, how bad must the backup be not be able to beat him out during spring ball? This line, or the overall game line is 7.5. I think it should be closer to 10. But I like the first half here because this game's going to be well in hand for the Cardinals, and I don't want to sweat any backdoors. I don't want to sweat anything weird happening towards the end of the game. I think Louisville here is a great spot against a pretty bad Pitt team.
Okay, Rachel, what's your blue chip bet?
I'm going way off the board here. So I'm taking Nick's spot in terms of going off the board. I'm actually going to a different sport entirely. I'm going Connor Bedard, the Chicago Blackhawks young superstar, over 2.5 at the Montreal Canadiens shots.
Okay.
You look at it, Connor Bedard has hit this line in the first period of both of his first 2 games against 2 pretty good teams in Pittsburgh and Boston. He's playing in Montreal on his first Saturday night. Connor Bedard is probably going to get 5 or 6 shots in this. So if you can get some alt shot lines, I would be looking at that. But for him to get over this number, I mean, I would probably take this in the first period. If we're being honest, this is a slam dunk for me. I absolutely love this bet. It's probably going to be my favorite bet of the year.
Look at the variety. Who said we're just an NFL show? Guys, great picks as always. Thanks so much for watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week for the variety show.